Hello, everyone.
Powered by Riverside
Welcome to
FM.
another episode of DiZruption. I'm your host, Tiwatope. Today, we'll be discussing technology and trust, the future of journalism in an AI world. Journalism has always evolved with technology, from the printing press to the radio, television, and the internet. But artificial intelligence could be its most disruptive shift yet. And AI is changing how stories are written, shared, and trusted. I mean, when we speak about trust, there are questions being raised about the truth, ethics, and the future of the profession itself. And as always, I'm not alone in the studio. And with me is someone whose personal journey reflects resilience, reinvention, and excellence. Mayokun Owojuyigbe. So, a brief introduction about Mayokun. I'll say allow him to introduce himself. So, Mayokun began his university education in medicine at the University of Ibadan, but he made a bold decision to start all over, returning to secondary school and retaking the WAEC examinations. Then he gained admission to study mass communication at Redeemer's University, where he graduated as the valedictorian of his set with an extraordinary CGPA of 4.93. And also during his time at Redeemer's University, he started a blog in the school, popularly known as Archbishop. Yes. And his journey is about courage and adaptability, qualities journalism itself needs in the age of artificial intelligence. Mayokun, welcome to DiZruption.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us here. We have a lot to talk about. Yeah. But before we get into AI and journalism, could you share with our listeners your personal journey, why you made that big switch from medicine to mass communication, and how it shaped your outlook on storytelling and the media?
Well, it was really just a journey into finding my passion, my real passion, and I can tell you for a fact that just about every day I run into students at Redeemer's University who seem to be in a similar situation. You ask them, why are you studying this course? They'll be like, my dad just said to study it, or I wanted law and they just gave me this course. And, those stories are always around us. But for me, it was more of an inquiry into my inner self, wanting to know what I truly enjoyed, what I truly loved doing with my life. And being in medical school, the time I spent there was enough to let me know that I didn't deeply enjoy doing the things in medical school. And like you summarized, I thank God for how the story went. I mean, me coming into the mass universities to study mass comm, I didn't know for sure how well I was going to perform, but I just felt if journalism is something I enjoy naturally, whether I get a first class or not, I'm just going to feel good studying what I'm studying. And we just thank God the story remains that way.
And how has your experience so far in journalism, how has it been?
Oh, it's been lovely. It's been wonderful. You sort of like hinted at the fact that maybe I have an extra advantage, or maybe being in med school, kind of influenced how I approach journalism. Yes, kind of a little, because in med school the training is very intense. In fact, I used to say back then that they train them like soldiers. It's just that instead of preparing yourself to kill, you are prepared to save. So the training is intense because you try not to miss out anything. The one thing you don't know might be the thing that makes a patient die on the operation table. So they always try to make sure you cross all your T's, you make sure you get everything right. So for me in journalism, it's also applicable because journalists strive for accuracy, they strive for truth, they strive for consistency. And those are things to train yourself with, over time, just so you can excel in the world of journalism. And for me, it's been fun because I think I love creating stories, yeah? Even when I was in med school, sometimes I'll just write based on things happening around me. I just love creating stories based on actual events. And journalism has been the portal for me to express myself and recreate stories based on things happening around me. It's been fun.
Thank you for that, Mayokun. All right, let's start big. Journalism has gone through so many phases. I mean, the era of newspapers. We've seen the era of radio as well, television, the internet, and now AI. From your perspective, how would you describe this evolution, and what stands out the most about this new AI era?
Well, I think it's relative to time. I want to believe the people in the time of Gutenberg, that was the person who brought about the print revolution, where it became possible to actually keep printing a lot of books. I feel like the people then saw it as something so marvelous. That went on for a while, and then, radio came up, and people were like, wow, someone can be speaking in America or can pick up the waves in Nigeria. While they were still looking over that, the TV came up, and people were like, wow, they can actually see human beings moving on a screen. And then the internet came, became quite popular and commercially successful around the late 90s, and people were like, wow, this will change everything. So I feel as we are here now in the world of AI, as it's still like massively evolving, because the past decade has been particularly significant because many more people in the public now know about AI. I mean, AI has always been there even from the 20th century, late 20th century, but it's become much more developed. And by 2022, you had ChatGPT coming up. That's exposed a lot of people. It recorded about 100 million users in the first 3 months. So that exposed a lot of people to the possibility of what AI is actually about. But it's just relativity. I mean, some 10, 20 years from now, I feel the kids of them will look at AI as, well, okay, it's just there, like, what's special about it? The way we look at the internet now, right? But for now, it's still evolving, it's still new, and it's looking like, wow, this is superb. But that's just what it is. With time, we'll get used to it. It's just another leap in technology, and it's not the first of the leaps in technology that journalism will experience.
For you, what stands out most about this period that we're in relative to the other periods that you know of, the radio, the internet? What makes this AI period much more different from the rest?
All right, the real thing that is happening is more like information shifts. With new technology, the way information is packaged, the way we access it gets to change. The internet did something where you could be in your room, type something, and results will come to you without walking to the library. But now, what AI does is it's massively invested in big data. That means there are millions, literally, there are millions of pages that the AI program is trained on. And like, when Google was still a traditional search engine, I know now they've introduced the AI overview, but then if you're looking for anything, let's say you want to type a recipe, how to fry yam without using oil, you'd have to start checking through blogs and be scrolling, and most times you get tired before, and at the base of Google, it's at least like page 1 to whatever. But most people will get tired on that first page of different websites and maybe stop on the first 3 or 4, right? But now what AI is doing is the information is surplus, and it helps you organize it in a way that you don't have to stress trying to link on information together. It does that for you. Another unique thing about it is that it literally speaks like a human being based on the natural language processing model. So it feels like a conversation. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm going to read something on the internet. It feels boring, like I'm reading a book, or it's so scholarly. No, it feels like an uncle that understands the stuff is sitting you down, explaining it to you. Maybe for some of us, maybe you don't know how to operate a car. Maybe you can drive a car, but maybe you don't know about the mechanics of the car. So imagine someone sitting down and breaking it down to you using relatable examples. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about AI, the fact that it's conversational, the fact that it speaks to you in everyday language, and the fact that it's based on surplus information, if I must say.
That's powerful. Now, lots of people think AI in journalism just means automated article writing. But beyond that, what are some surprising or lesser known ways you have seen AI tools being used in newsrooms, maybe globally, but also here in Nigeria?
Yeah, writing is about, if you ask me, just a little bit of it, because there's a lot that goes on in the background before an article comes to light. But, journalism is not just about written articles. There's the broadcast journalism where we've got the TV, the radio, and of course, recent times, there's the new media journalism where people post on YouTube, where people post on blogs and whatnot, or websites. But the thing now is, before an article comes to light, processes like research take place in the background, processes like verifying the information, processes like interviewing people, getting their perspective, including their quotation, processes like going to the site, taking pictures to confirm the news and all those things. And AI has found a way to actually be applied in several of those areas. Now, let me use a Nigerian example, even though it's just one of a kind for now, but hopefully in the next 5 years, more media establishments will follow suit. But like earlier this year, TVC News announced that they were going to be introducing virtual presenters. Now, what virtual presenters are is that it's using AI to synthesize the voice and everything, and then it's merging it with a virtual reality sort of stuff where you're looking at the person. The person looks like one of their uncles. Well, that's AI you're just looking at. And I'm sure some of us have seen these trending automated memes going around. Like there was one 2 months ago. It was a meme, but they made it look like someone was presenting news, where the guy was like, the government has said single people should not be allowed to buy data in Nigeria. I don't know. I don't know if you came across that. So those are some of the processes, that have been mimicked that is actually happening in journalism. People are using it to do research. People are using it to see, okay, if this presenter is on shift, if the person is not around, maybe the person has traveled or is on leave, can we still find a way to present without them being physically around? So AI is sort of introducing all those possibilities. Of course, because it's still an evolving technology, there's a lot that is happening in the background that we might not know because companies are still, as it's where they're seeing the research phase, they're still experimenting. But from the little we know it's not just about writing. It's being used in broadcast, it's being used in conversion. I mean, you can use ChatGPT now too. I know some phones could do this before, but more people know about this now because you can use ChatGPT to scan a document, and what you wrote out with your handwriting, you can convert it to text. You can also use it to convert speech to text, and interviewing people is one of the things within journalism. And AI now helps you to, instead of sitting down, listening back to the recording and transcribing yourself, you always use AI to do that now. So a lot of other sorts of processes like that, AI is already helping with them. But writing is very basic and easy to see out there. So people might tend to feel, okay, AI, okay, just use it to write. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more that it does.
And still on a lot more, can you share the details of how things operate in a newsroom, from, let's say, gathering the stories, the sources, to having a full detailed report?
Okay, all right. So traditionally speaking now, because before AI came on board, internet itself was already revolutionizing how news gathering was done. Traditionally speaking, let's say I have an incident somewhere, there needs to be a reporter that will go to the scene. He's going to go with his gear, of course. God is depending on what media establishment he works for. If he's working for a newspaper, he might not need more than a note and a camera just to take a picture. Then, as he's asking questions, he's noting things down. If he's working in the TV, he's going to need to go with some recording gear, mic on screen and all those kind of stuff. Now, he goes to the sites, he's piecing together all those details, and when he's done with the preliminary collection, there are people waiting in the newsroom who are actually, writers and editors who are going to go through that story from one person. There are like different desks. If you see the organogram of a typical news establishment, you have lower level writers who write, you have editors at the pass these things too. You have senior level editors too, because it's not just one phase of it. And that's what's called gatekeeping in journalism. But the point is, different pairs of eyes will look at these articles, make corrections there and there, say, hope there are no legal implications of this thing we're about to write, hope there's no gross misconduct being displayed, hope we're not, if there's a picture, hope we're not displaying something that shouldn't be displayed, do we have to blow out a part? Now, all those processes go on in the newsroom before it now gets to production team. Now, your production team, if it's a newspaper, you might have written a beautiful job, but the way it's going to come out on the newspaper, you need someone in the computer lab who's going to say, okay, arrange it this way, put this picture there, break this paragraph there, and all those kind of things, yeah? And if it's TV too, if it's someone that's going to present the news, the people you see on screen who are reading out those things, they are not the ones that most times sit down and write them. The writers have done the initial phase, and when it gets to production level, those ones take it up. So that's basically the flow. Just know that you have some people who gather the news, some who initially write it, some who clean it up, pass it up to senior level editors, then they pass it on to the production team.
That's interesting. I have to ask, are Nigerian media organizations actually ready for AI? Do we have the infrastructure, the skills, and the mindset to adopt these tools properly?
But that's an interesting question because, like I mentioned, internet was already revolutionizing journalism before AI now, came to public scene. But the truth of the matter is we are not even done fully adopting AI and internet penetration yet. And that's like still basic level though, before you even start going into AI. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but Nigeria is one of those countries listed as those that they have minimal internet penetration. I mean, the side of the world where we live in Nigeria, you might feel like, okay, I mean, everybody has internet now. That's because you're like in certain urban cities that, just happen to be connected to the internet. But a predominant part of the nation, you understand, are people that are still maybe transitioning from rural areas to semi-urban areas who actually are living their day-to-day lives without being connected to the internet. So that's the phase where Nigeria still is at, and now AI is coming. Obviously, it's not a balanced game. Even for internet, some had gone far ahead in the same Nigeria, some are left behind. You enter some newsrooms and every corner of it is powered with Wi-Fi. And you enter some other newsrooms, you probably see the person relying on his own personal hotspots to make things work. Yeah. So, of course, the different media establishments in the different parts of the country, and let's not forget that the way Nigeria is divided, some states cannot even boast of certain media infrastructure that some other states have. All right. So, but the point is, there are some who are ready. They have the infrastructure, they have the wherewithal, they probably have the manpower to import skills from abroad, people that are skilled to train them or to apply these things. But on a larger scene, compared to what's occurring in European countries and North America, those are the ones that have made steady progress in AI using media and journalism, right? On a larger scene, we are still far behind. But it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. I mean, if you go to Ghana too, most of the AI accounts there for journalism are individual accounts. Maybe a journalist who happens to just chance on chat GPT and is happening to use it. But as an institution, you still find many of them in the experimental phase. And another issue is, research sometimes doesn't match reality contemporarily. What I mean by that is, you might have, let's say we have 100 establishments that have started using AI right now in Nigeria. There might not be a single research that will cover all those 100 to find out what they're already doing until the next 5 years. I guess what I'm saying. So there might be a certain reality that we are not seeing now, but I'm speaking based on available literature and what we know now from studies that have been done and the things you can observe around. I mean, I just mentioned the case of TVC. That's just one out of many TV stations in the country that have come out to say, yes, we have AI technology. I think 2-3 years ago, Daniels portrayed some AI stuff. They didn't say they're going to adopt it as per day-to-day broadcasting, but they presented Kayode Okikiolu, one of their anchors that appears on Politics Today when Shehu Kimbalo is not here, and he was demonstrating some AI technology. I think the election before, maybe 2019, I can't remember now. They also displayed one hologram stuff. I don't know if AI was involved in that technology, but those are just like very, very minute cases compared to the bigger picture. So I think we still have a long way to go as a country. I feel we are still far from being ready. Since I said even the internet that is like a precursor to the AI, we have still not fully adopted it. But ultimately, whether we like it or not, with time, whether the private sector does it or the government does it or they do it as collabo, somehow we'll start getting there.
Okay, let's look at the positives for a moment. For resource-constrained newsrooms, which is the reality in Nigeria, what would you say are the biggest benefits AI can bring?
Okay, there are like two major classes when I was speaking of organizations adopting AI. You could have your individual team members and staff members relying on it independently without, you guys saying it as an organization that we want to be using AI tools, or they might just find it readily available, choose to use it. Then there's the case of saying, okay, as a media organization like TVC did, they're even open about it, they were advertising it. we are now going to officially be relying on AI for so and so aspects of our everyday work. Even for resource constrained newsrooms, you cannot exactly decide what your staff members will do. All you need is for them to produce results. If they find a means of producing the result better, they will go for it. Uh, Grammarly, for instance, Grammarly sort of relies on AI to it. Helps you clean up your articles. Before you pass it on to an editor, yeah, it helps you say, okay, let me see, how can I fine tune this thing? What are the major errors there? What are the inconsistencies? Let a computer look at it for me, recommend suggestions. When I'm doing that, I'm actually reducing the burden that will be on the next person who is going to edit. I'm reducing editing time. Invariably, I'm saving cost because let's say normally my system would have been on for like 2 hours to process an article. If I have something like Grammarly to check it out for me, I'm cutting down that time to like say 15 minutes, and we are reducing power that we need to spend running that computer, for instance. So there are still possibilities. It might not be wide scale yet, but in the little ways, all right, in the little ways here and there, AI has started. I can assure you. Let me just use the university system as an example. AI has potential of educating people. You understand? Like when I spoke earlier about how Google now introduces AI overview, you don't have to go from one side to the other before you get a glimpse of the information you're looking for. Students can choose to, on their own, right, gain the information, get trained, satisfy their curiosity just by typing questions. I'm not talking about during exams, so just for the fun of learning, just by typing questions into ChatGPT. Now, asking if that will help them in the long run. I mean, nobody can really answer that question until we do a research later on the effects. But all the individual uses of ChatGPT already going on in the educational system, whether you like it or not, it's already creating an effect. And I can tell you some of those effects are getting big. Some are not really good because now people feel like, I mean, why do I have to? Not everyone, but people just feel like this thing I can get on ChatGPT, whether I have to stress, whether I have to be in class from morning till whatever time. But the point is, I'm sure within the next 5 years or so, even if we cannot pinpoint and say it's because of AI that this thing is starting to happen in journalism, the effect will just start showing some way somehow because the eventual thing that will happen when you have a lot of individuals tapping into the resources of ChatGPT or any other AI directly or indirectly. Because let's say, for instance, I'm interviewing someone, but maybe don't have time to go down to his house, so you send him the questions and you're expecting a response. Maybe the person on the norms, there are certain phrases he doesn't use. He might feel like, let me clean up this interview before I send him. I just be like, okay, Grammarly, what should I do here? Just clean up this article for me. And he sends it to you. Now, the eventual thing you're going to put out, even after you edit, is still based on a fragment of AI, but you don't know it. But the point is AI is already in the system. The effects will begin to show. So definitely, even for resource-constrained newsrooms, they can benefit from all the readily available AI tools currently out there.
Just summarizing what you said, some of the benefits are AI can help them to save time, save money. So that's a positive. And of course, there's also a downside. When AI delivers instant news, do you think we risk losing depth, context, and that spirit of investigative journalism that takes time and rigor?
Yes, that's a possibility. Sorry, I think because of the environment where I stay and work most of the time, I tend to use a lot of university-based examples. But let's take a look at this before we started speaking about AI. Anytime students went on the internet to get answers to their assignments, you have lecturers complain sometimes. Be like, all of you just copy this thing from Wikipedia. Now you'd have a separate set of students who actually went on the same internet, went to a number of journals that they found on the internet, and they gave a fantastic assignment from the same internet. So find that is the possibility. Lazy journalists might pick up whatever AI is assisting them with and not do their own thorough part of the job. But the point is, I think it still boils down to the journalist himself. AI is just a tool, just like the internet. It's just like driving a car. If you choose to drive roughly, there's going to be a problem. If you choose to drive the proper way, things will go fine. So AI can inherently, by design and by the fact that it's still a technology in progress, let's not forget we haven't gotten to a point yet. I mean, it's a fiction. There's something called artificial superintelligence. It's a fiction and expectation that there will be one day that AI will be so intelligent as to be able to do basically everything a human being should be able to do. But for now, the technology itself is still evolving. All right. And now, if you are speaking about depth, context, and all those things that journalists are trained to actually get into an article, I think we are not yet at a point where we can put all of that responsibility on AI tools. The journalist still needs to do his own work. There's a research study that was proposing that the stage we should be at now is not a stage of dumping all the work on AI. It should be a stage of synergy. Like, I do my work as though there was no AI. I do all the things I'm supposed to do normally, do the research, do the proofreading. Then I get AI to also do a version of its own. Then we look at both of them, then we'll pick the best of both parts, we'll combine it and we'll produce something that is a collaboration between AI and human journalists. So I really think it still boils down to the journalist. Even if AI produces an article that lacks depth and all those things, ultimately, AI is not a physical entity. Nobody's going to blame the AI. They're still going to blame you, right? So I feel it still boils down to the journalist, his journalistic training, and of course, his own personal disposition and work ethic.
And it reminds me of something a guest and I discussed in episode 5, that even though AI is getting more advanced and we all are using it in our everyday activities, we shouldn't get to the point where we are outsourcing our thinking, our reasoning to AI models. We should still be the ones in charge. Yeah.
That's right.
So let's flip it. Despite AI's impressive abilities, what aspects of journalism do you believe remain completely irreplaceable by machines?
Okay, so journalism is not just about taking stories and pumping it out. It's not in the typical way that you find a production industry where, let's say, if you are making Labubu dolls, or I think that's what's trending now, and we have a production unit. These guys, you make the hair, stitch it onto the body. At the end of the production line, there's something that comes out. The dynamics of journalism are more intricate than that. People are involved, lives are involved, there are interests to protect. I mean, sometimes these things are not glaring, but they happen behind the scenes, all right? If a new story comes in now, I need to use this example because it's just the truth of the matter. If a new story comes in now and it's about Pastor Adeboye, let's say one of these, cases that have trended in the past, and someone is saying, why would IGO be supporting tithes, blah, blah, blah. If it comes to someone like me, I'm a fan. I'm a member of the church. It's my role model. I love the man. It's very natural, right? That I want to maybe keep that story down, or maybe say it in a way that would paint my joy in a good light. This kind of sentiments naturally, we are human beings. We can't stop it. We are trained against it as journalists, to stay objective, to always, be able to know where your interests are conflicting with the story about to put out. But the truth of the matter is, sometimes, no matter how subtle it is, we still have interests, right? And our own beliefs to protect. Now, these things, I don't know if AI, I don't think it matters, but I don't know. I don't think AI has gotten to that point yet. AI is not a human being. Human beings, one of the things that make us to actually survive the world we live in is our emotional intelligence. It's not just about AI is intelligent in terms of it has data, it knows how to process it and give you an answer. But that emotional aspect is still lacking. I mean, AI developers would admit that to you. It's still an area of concern that, okay, if you're telling AI to write stories, there might be a bias that has been written into the algorithm. Because let's not forget, the algorithm that AI runs on is based on data that human beings produced. You understand?
Yes.
So fine, AI is doing marvelous things with information, but it didn't create the information all by itself, right? It's just remodifying, taking bits and pieces from different sources and putting it into a comprehensible whole. But the point is, there's still some nuances of everyday life, like in the journalism field, that AI cannot answer all the questions to. If you program it to go this way today, by tomorrow something new might happen. That makes it, I mean, look at in politics, for instance, look at the case of our governor in Osun State, Governor Adeleke. One week we are saying, okay, maybe it's going to leave PDP to APC. The next week we're hearing a different story. Now, if I programmed AI the week before that Governor Adeleke is a member of APC, and by next, of PDP, sorry, and by next week is saying conflicting data, it's going to need time to catch up with that. That's number one. Number two, he might not, I said AI might not understand the political, cultural nuances that go with, all these cross-carpeting. He might understand it based on things that have happened in the past, but in the now, it might not easily understand that. So in the now, those decisions, we need editors to actually make such decisions, saying, okay, this is what's going to be in the editorial today. This is what we can say. This is what we cannot say. This current controversial issue, because sometimes that's what editorials are about. This current controversial issue, like the current situation of is it Comfort Emerson now, with the airline, that scandal and everything, with K12 and everything. Those are issues that come up fresh, and this is why we bring analysts into the studio. They come up fresh. They might look like something that's happened in the past, but they are still a unique situation because the personalities involved are different. The context of the occurrence is different. I don't think these are things that AI catches up fast with for now. Now, let's not be deceived by AI because AI sounds intelligent, right? I mean, if you have an intelligent friend, over time, you start to believe that whatever this guy says, it makes sense. I mean, sometimes before you even hear what he's saying, if you see what this one come on screen, you'll be like, this prof now is gonna say something that makes sense. That's AI for you. It might still give you answers that look all right, but in the long run, and if you look at the nitty-gritty of it, there are some decisions that it might have overlooked because it's simply not a human being. So we still need human trained journalists who are professionally qualified in editorial roles for editorial oversight, for making subtle decisions that go beyond the skills of journalism to the skills of management, the skills of managing your image as a media establishment and on like that. So I don't think AI has become that sophisticated yet.
And permit me to just digress a bit. I heard one saying somewhere, and I just want to confirm it. Is it true that in journalism, bad news sells faster and better?
Oh, it's a maxim we use. It's not a matter of history in journalism. It's true in the world. It's true in the world. I'm sure you get much more curious when someone says there's been a bomb blast or there's been a fire somewhere than they're like, oh, one woman has been waiting for the foot of the womb, just gave birth. If you're in redemption camp, you'll be happy. If you're on the streets, that's just business, waiting concern us. Look at many of the things that trend. There's an element of bad news in them. Like the two cases I mentioned recently, Kwam 1 and like someone jokingly said, Kwam 2, those two people that were involved at the airport, there's element of bad news in it. I mean, someone was maltreated or someone broke the law. Or there's element of bad news in it. Iran versus whoever is fighting with them, that's element of bad news, conflict, those things. It's not because all journalism does is it recognizes that this is the information need of the people, right? This is what the people are interested in hearing about. And I tell you, that's one of the reasons why Linda Ikeji's blog grew very fast, because she knew how to play to the sentiments of Nigerians. She knew how to say the things that a professional news establishment cannot come out and say. Pictures that they cannot put out. Hope you know this Comfort Emerson situation. Obviously, the likes of Guardian, Punch, by their professional conduct, they never put out that kind of video without censoring it. But I can bet you there's no way such a video uncensored would have circulated that wide without having some smaller, unprofessional blogs circulating it. All right. So I think it's just the way it works. Once there's an element of bad news in something, people just get curious. People just get curious. It's human nature. It's not just peculiar to journalism.
Thank you. Now, ethics. I mean, system of right and wrong. Ethics is where things get even more complicated in journalism. With AI writing or assisting in content, issues of misinformation and bias naturally come up. I mean, we've pointed out that AI is trained on human data, and we humans were not perfect. Our data is a reflection of our biases. What do you see as the biggest ethical concerns right now?
Okay, if you check through literature on AI and ethics, you find some recurring themes. Yeah, you find people talking about privacy concerns. You find people talking about misinformation, definitely too. Misinformation. You find people talking about, a lot of things are still related to the fact that AI can propagate misinformation or there can be privacy concerns that this data, where these things even sourcing its information from, how are we able to verify it? Is this stealing somebody's hidden records based on their chats or email? I mean, that's still a gray area currently that I think it just take a long time of policy making and law implementations to be able to get a balance to it. But let me put this to you. We everyday users of technologies like Google, for instance. I mean, if you enter a site and they say, blah, 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 your privacy is secure, if you choose not to accept the cookies, you're fine. You are clicking a button, you are seeing what they want you to see, but do you really know what goes on behind the scenes? So even you might be using a browser and it says, "Don't worry, it's incognito. Anything you want to search here, once it's going to wipe it in your front, right? Like your search history can be cleared, or you can go to your search history and click wipe. You're seeing the response, you're seeing the reaction, but behind the scenes, I do believe strongly that the people behind these systems, they still have the data somewhere. But I was reading something, I'm not a tech person, but we just read some of these things, and I was reading about the fact that when you delete a file, of course, it seems to disappear from your system, but the person was claiming that it actually doesn't disappear. That it just goes into a
Yeah,
certain folder.
it's still there.
Now, some of these issues will creep up and come up as the things we are looking at as, okay, this is AI and it's biased, it's this, it's that. But I think it's just the inherent weakness of the system itself. I don't know if there will ever be a time. It might still be too early to tell because obviously all the people involved in governance and then the people involved in tech, they try to blend these things well to make sure the services are doing for the people what it should do. And at the same time, people feel safe using these devices. But I don't think you can eventually totally wipe out the possibility of AI making some ethical issues come up out of the system because at the seat of AI itself are the developers, those who worked on it, those who, wrote the system, wrote the program, those who are operating the servers that hold the data that these things operate on. And even if you say you're creating a policy and everything, we really don't see everything that happens behind the scenes. You don't get the access to what's happening at the back end, right? So I feel these things are there, but I don't know if there's a particular solution to them right now. I think they will just continue to be debated, and because we just see AI for saving us more benefits than and disadvantages, we just continue to manage with it like that. But those concerns are real, all right? Those concerns are real. And let me just mention that those concerns too are still linked somehow to human beings because information doesn't just come up on itself. What you call misinformation is a rumor somebody started somewhere. The intent might have been different. You might have said it to a friend as a prank. Somebody will pick it and spread it around. There was this hoax one time that Rema was dead. And I think I was in 100 level that time. And it was so interesting because the news had started spreading. And the same Rema, that's Rema, the Afrobeat musician. It was still very much in Nigeria and with Maven at that time, shortly after I released to Maven and whatnot. And they're like, the guy was dead, and people were already spreading the rumor. It was spreading fast, just like Mobile 2 was spreading, and people were like, somewhere like, is it true? Is it not true? Now, the same rumor that they said was dead, as the news was spreading on the internet, on his Instagram, he came and he made a post. Someone still went in the comment section and wrote, "Please, are you truly dead?" So, but the point is, these pranks, yeah, they are played by human beings. And because AI is not entirely separate from the stuff we feed it with. It's still computer. Let's not forget the common saying of garbage in, garbage out. If AI is listening to humans, as it were, let me just picture it that way. AI is listening to what we humans say. If you tell it the wrong thing, it's going to say the wrong thing too, because it doesn't know any better. It only knows as much as we give it the data to know. You understand? So at the base of it, we still have human beings, responsible for these things, but I don't know if AI can overcome that anytime soon because it's like asking if we humans can become perfect. And since AI is working in an imperfect world where people will always be mischievous and stuff, even when computer was not this sophisticated, we already had people developing viruses. Like for what now? Why are you developing a virus? Let the computer function and help mankind. But no, people will always be mischievous. So I don't know if we ever get to a level now where there's nothing wrong with AI, there's nothing wrong with human. Maybe when we get to heaven, but in this world, I think AI will still continue to have those issues. But obviously, the basic thing is with time, we can find ways to mitigate these things. you can find, because you can always find a way to just go around it. There can be policies that can help. There can be, ways to seek redress. Maybe if you feel your data has been breached or misinformation is spread wrongfully about you. Even on the internet, I believe you might know this. If it's not, let's take this comfortable case, for instance. There's a DMCA, right, that allows that to, I think they call it digital millennial corporate. I can't remember the words now. Maybe if you find it, you could help us put it in the caption of the podcast. But it's DMCA. It has to do with Millennium Corporate Rights. She can go to Google or lodge a complaint, and they will get those videos removed from the internet. So far, she can prove that she's the person involved.
Sorry, DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
All right, thank you very much. So that's something that stands in the way of something they see as the archiprancy of human beings, that okay, people are going to do funny things, but how can we seek redress for them? So all those kind of things, checks and balances can be put in place, but I don't think AI will get to a point where those ethical concerns are totally wiped out. We just find a way to cope with it with time.
And if, for example, an AI-assisted article spreads false or even harmful information, who should ultimately take responsibility? The developer, the journalist, or the media house itself?
I know some ethical commentators might be like, they should all share the responsibility, since the developer made the software, the journalists used it, the media house pushed it out there. But I think for most media organizations, to be able to actually protect the integrity of their journalists and to actually encourage the spirit of journalism, the spirit of investigative and bold journalism, most times when there's an issue like that, the media house covers for it. Except if it's a gross misconduct that, the journalist was just way irresponsible and then he has to stand in court for himself. Most times, the media house will cover. I know, for instance, now, if there's an issue with something you have published as a media house, they will send for the editor. Most times, not even the writer, they will send for the editor because they see the media house as the one that, put the final stamp on that article to go out. All right. So, when such a thing happens, I strongly believe that even though different people played a part, different people, were involved in the actual final production, I think the media house should still be the accountable body for something like this. Well, let's not forget that this is a matter of jurisdiction. You might get to court and they are saying otherwise based on the peculiarities of the case. But from what I'm saying, based on the data I know from media law and ethics, if what you have done is not so grave, it's not like you killed somebody or went out of line in doing your duty. If it's just a case that can still be settled in court, most times the media house will find a legal representative that's going to have your back. But ultimately, we cannot put the responsibility of false information, like I said before, on AI itself, of course. It's dependent on what we human beings feed it with. But that's just my opinion on that particular one.
Thank you. How can AI actually protect information integrity? Like verifying facts, spotting fakes, or checking sources. Because there are AI models that are using deep learning and natural language processing that can be used to detect fake news. So, do you think it is possible that we see media houses in the long term using AI to protect information integrity?
Well, in fact, they started doing that. Al Jazeera published a study in, I think that was as early as 2022. In-house, Al Jazeera was practicing something that they called AI used to combat misinformation. So what they were basically doing is you're following all the normal journalistic processes. And don't forget, Al Jazeera is, it's up there when you're speaking of global journalism. It's really up there. If you're speaking of the technology for broadcasting, state of the art, they've got it. But now what they began to see was a tendency as the internet grew and deepfake technology grew and AI technology grew, a tendency for misinformation to be introduced. This time not for the purpose of just playing tricks, but for the purpose of propaganda, right? For the purpose of controlling the narrative and making what credible news organizations are saying to make them sound untrue, while people just peddle their own narrative. So Al Jazeera already tried something like that. Now, the answer I'll give to that is for AI to actually help with information integrity, it will need to over time perfect its feedback loop. Now, what recent, not recent AI, there's a specific word for it, but modern AI technology learns to autocorrect itself in the sense that if it gives you information today, it can use a feedback loop based on your response to retrain itself and know how to answer that same question better the next time. If you use ChatGPT a lot, you notice of recent some trials they've been doing. I think they're using it for beta testing. I don't know, but I've in the past 3 weeks. I mean, I'm a very curious person. I ask ChatGPT a lot of questions. If ChatGPT was a human being, that guy would have packed out of my house by now. I ask a lot of questions. I could see a bird flying and be like, why do birds even fly that high? I'm just interestingly that curious. So now, sometimes I ask it a question. I wasn't doing this before. This started like just last month. I ask it a question, then instead of giving me a direct response, it gives me two or three different responses and tells me to respond to pick the one I feel is the best response. All right. Now, they're also trying on a new model that uses deeper thinking. That means sometimes now when you type on ChatGPT, instead of giving a straight response, it will tell you that it's processing the information and it's thinking longer. All right. So all these things are for some people, for some of the AI tools that we use, like Perplexity, like Google Gemini and whatnot, they have programmed into the AI system itself to learn from the data. Not just the data they trained it with, but like as it's interacting with the users over time. Although there's a thin line there because you're not supposed to be using the data to train yourself, because that's breaching privacy. But basically, it can learn from new experiences, update its database because I don't know if you've ever experienced asking AI a question and it tells you that the data it was trained on stops at a specific year. Then it goes on to search the web for what is current. All right. So I think over time, just as a human being learns, as you're growing, maybe you're pronouncing a word wrongly in primary four and they're like, no, that's not how to pronounce that. Then you learn that, okay, this is how to pronounce this word. You go on and it gets better with time. But the fact that you've now learned how to pronounce that word doesn't mean every other thing in your life is not perfect. There are still other little errors or major errors here and there you have to correct. So I think it's a continuous process. And with time, I believe, I'm not saying here we are attain perfection. I don't think so, but I think it's to learn how to handle responses better and know what human beings put premium on, which is information integrity, credibility. I mean, all those values for which we respect journalists. AI will over time learn to conform to them.
Thank you for that. And speaking on information integrity, that ties into accountability. If content is assisted by AI, how can media houses ensure that they remain transparent and responsible to their audience?
For this question you asked now, it brings back memories of when we were in secondary school. My own secondary school, we were not allowed to take provisions here. And of course, you can know what will happen from there now. People will find a way to sneak it in. You find provision in the weirdest places, under the bed, under the bunk, behind the locker, inside different hidden corners of the bag. Now, why am I saying that? If you have an open AI policy in an establishment, which is what I sincerely recommend for any media establishment that wants to catch up with what's trending in the 21st century, if you have an open AI system, nobody needs to hide behind AI, do the work with AI, then come out and stand as though they did it themselves. You understand? Obviously, in a newsroom today, if you are told to type a document, nobody will blame you for using a computer. In fact, people will look down on you for using a typewriter because nobody's using that anymore. We are all openly using computer, right? If AI is something that is embraced in its developing stage by media establishments, I think it will promote accountability because if we are all using it, if an issue comes up from there, we can find out how to fix it. But if media establishments are bent on, and I'm speaking in context of Nigeria now, if we are bent on, let's do it the way we've been doing it before, there was a way we could survive when AI was not here. Fine, you could survive when AI was not here, but we all know that despite the downsides, ethical concerns, and whatnot, there are benefits to these things. There are documented benefits. Just like the internet too. When it first came, people were skeptical. I don't want to mention the name now, but I know many people know the story. But it's just a story of how technology can eventually be accepted, even though we might have mixed feelings at first. A pastor that I respect so much, I respect the great grace of God upon him, but he had his concerns about television when television came to Nigeria because of the kind of images that were being shown. He felt this was ungodly, and I know at the time we referred to the television as the devil's box. Now, years later, he had to change that perspective, and he felt like instead of just criticizing this technology, let's take it over for God. And they have massive following even on their TV now. I'm sure you know the church I'm talking about, but that's just an example of how when technology first comes out and we look at all the flaws, the misinformation we spoke about earlier, the data privacy concerns. But I'll be like, now let's not use this thing. Let's do things we were doing before. But the truth of the matter is, if we learn to use it, we also learn how to master it. So I feel if there's an open AI policy, it's going to promote accountability because we sort of begin to naturally see the middle points between where humans' responsibilities end and where AI responsibilities take over. For instance, if I type something with a computer, you won't blame that computer for typographical errors, right? Even though the computer was massively involved in that project. But at the end of the day, the journalist is still accountable. But being open about the process that was used helps the organization as a whole. And I can tell you from the way the audiences perceive media, if you're meeting up with your duties of giving them credible information, you are consistently true. I mean, you're doing all the things a proper media house should do. Trust me, with time, none of them is bothered about what method you are using. How many viewers of TV do you think even know the model of the camera you're using to record? They don't know now. Are they there on the feed you? All they need is that anytime you go, they see the image of what's happening at the National Assembly and they appreciate the news, right? So I think that's what matters in the end. The concern should be more about producing credible, uh, well-documented news, in the way that journalists ought to. And I think with time, we all just know where the role of AI falls. But to now say that we should keep a distance from AI, I think that's when people will now start trying to cheat the system, doing things with AI, and then trying not to be open about it.
So, zooming out a bit, do you think artificial intelligence is going to fundamentally change the role of journalists? Or will it simply shift skills and tasks they focus on?
Of course, yes. Ultimately. If I was to take it deep into the historical processes of producing a newspaper, it was much different when printing technology had not advanced this much. I can tell you for a fact there was a time stories were typed on a typewriter, and a copying machine was used to produce multiple copies. And even the arrangement of the pictures, it was so mathematical. You had to count number of blocks, the depth and width that the text would fit into. It was such an archaic method. All right. Well, now we can speak of computer journalists. We can speak of people in a newsroom who are doing all these things on recent applications like Photoshop, uh, Publisher, or even Canva. Even Canva can now do some of those kind of things now, yeah? So I think with time, it's going to create a situation where we're having roles that are unique to AI. I was reading the news just this morning of I don't know if how true it is for it to be the first in Africa, but the claim is the first AI university in Africa, and the sod turning was done at Modakeke just last week by Governor Deleke and a couple of people. But the point is, 10 years from now, we was thinking of something called an AI university, right? So I think the way this technology is going, it will definitely in universities now, I'm proudly so Redeemers University too. We speak of courses like information technology, and you'll be surprised that there are so many students applying to that department. These are things that came on with the advent of the internet, right? So ultimately, I think there will be roles that will be assigned to journalists afresh, that the roles that didn't even exist before because of AI. There will be roles that will be modified, right? Maybe some 50 years back, a journalist didn't carry a laptop around. Today it does. So some roles will be modified because AI is now part of the work processes. And ultimately, some roles, I don't like to see them as AI replacing jobs. I see it more as an evolution, like we're evolving with the technology. So what we used to look at as this is this role, that role has now taken a different shape and form, but that's just where I see it. So definitely it's going to have an impact on the role of journalists, it's going to have an impact on the skills they possess and everything with time. And it's already happening.
And speaking of skills, one thing that excites me is how AI could support local languages. I mean, earlier this year we saw on social media, I don't know if you came across it, there was this student, I think in Unilag, that created an AI model called Yan GPT. And the model could read the three major languages, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. And Nigeria has a lot of ethnic groups. I mean, even ones that you might have never heard of before. So how do you see AI helping journalists report in indigenous languages and expand access in underserved regions?
I believe you're asking that question in a Nigerian context. Now, in Nigeria alone, there are over 350 ethnic groups. I mean, we just mentioned three major languages now. There are many more. Now, that's Nigeria alone, though, out of over 190 nations of the world. In all those different nations, too, I'm pretty sure there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of other languages that are neither English nor Mandarin or French or any other, global or well-known language. So I think it just boils down to a matter of individual research in different sectors. All right. But for now, I think a country like Nigeria, what we should be looking to do to really make out the full potentials of AI for our local setting is to, excuse me, to really make out the benefits of AI for our local setting is to invest in research, local research. We also have our own AI developers. Interestingly, one of the men that was celebrated in 2025 for a research paper I wrote on AI back in 2022 or 2023 is a Nigerian. He's based in the US. I don't remember his name now, but he's a Nigerian. So I feel like if we invest in local research, there are Nigerians who are interested in this thing, Nigerians like you and I, who are just intrigued by the topic of AI and are learning more about it out of our curiosity. There are people who are interested in doing research. There are companies that can fund research and development to see how to hone AI to a local Nigerian context to serve, Nigerian people in Nigerian language. And interestingly, ChatGPT, the OpenAI, the company behind that ChatGPT, they're a smart company. I think Sam Altman or something is the man's name, the CEO. They're a smart company. I mean, as we speak currently, ChatGPT is operating in Yoruba. I don't know about Hausa. I've never tried the app on it, but I know it operates in Yoruba. I've converted a Russian journal article before to English. So I think, and then I know it runs on Pidgin too. That's how versatile that chatbot has become. So I think with more researchers, with more people investing in research and helping local developers of AI, I think we can maximize the possibilities more. Because it's one thing for an AI technology to be developed in the Western world, then given the language ability to adapt to our local sequence. But it's another thing for the AI systems to actually be developed based on an understanding of the local context. I get in it. I think it's a whole different ballgame. So in one case, we're speaking about its ability to adapt the data it has to our language. In another case, we're speaking about its ability to actually even have data that's originated from us, not data that the Oyinbo put in it to answer our problems. We should be able to have a system where the so-called big data we can also lay hands on one that is Nigerian-centric in the long run. But I think it really calls for heavy investment because these things are easy to say, but when it comes to the field of research, the field of development, and empowering people to actually make advances, we are talking about millions of dollars sometimes involved in reaching these goals.
All right. We've looked at it in the local context. I want us to look at it from a global perspective. So globally, some countries and organizations are already integrating AI into their media systems quite effectively. So, for example, the Associated Press They use AI to generate articles about corporate earnings. The New York Times also leverages AI to personalize the reader experience. And the BBC as well also makes use of AI to make personalized content across all of their platforms for their users. What best practices or lessons do you think Nigeria can learn from these global examples?
Yeah, so basically, we should learn us to put the cart before the horse, and those examples you mentioned, I can tell you for a fact because I've also read about them. I can tell you for a fact that they don't just come out and start using these things. They are driven by two key things that I think are necessary for any country that is looking to adopt AI fully. They're driven by research and development. That's one. They don't just do things out of the blue and be like, whatever effect it has, let's just see. No, there's research and development. You need to be careful what you're doing does not have grave human consequences in the short or the long run. That's one. I mean, misinformation in itself can create problems. A wrong publication can create a lot of issues. So that's one. So number two is policy. These things are based on policy. Nigeria is one interesting country here because even as of today, the issue of copyright is still it's not clear cut in some situations. I mean, in Nigeria, you can just go online, download anybody's song. I mean, piracy is just water. People are doing it without knowing they are guilty of it, and we're doing it every day. Now, so if there's no policy to back up, the processes that are going into trying to adopt a technology such as that, you just find number one of the problems you find is that there's no cohesion in the rate of adoption. The people in the north are doing their own, the people in TVC are doing their own, the people in channels are doing their own. There's no coming together to say, as a nation, how can we get this thing to move us forward? So I think those two things are key: research and development. And I'm talking long term, heavily in invested research, not just what we do at university level when the resources are limited. And you might study a topic for maybe 1 year for your undergrad or MSc. And then after that, you might just be looking for funding to do a deeper study. I'm talking about like intense, long-term, well-invested studies that, study these things over time and see how we can better improve on them. And of course, policies. There are already policies currently out there. The OECD introduced one in 2019. There are a few ones out there too, that are trying to recommend for both the international body and European countries or maybe US on how to adopt AI, not just in journalism, but in the human sphere generally. But I think those two things are key to actually follow the suit of best practices that other countries are following. Let's invest in research and development and let our AI adoption be policy driven because policy will tackle the questions of these are the ethical concerns. What do we do about it? What are the provisions when this happens? And then when you speak of policy, you can begin to speak about, okay, what can we write into law to help people who are using AI or trying to benefit from AI?
Finally, let's talk about the next generation. For aspiring journalists listening today to this episode, what new skills do you think they should be building to stay relevant in this AI-driven media landscape?
All right, I'm glad you specified the question for aspiring journalists because one thing they'll be shocked to find out is that by the time they come into the game, they might be shocked to find out that the so-called aged veteran journalists are even more skillful in the use of AI than they. How do I know this? Some of our parents went to school at a time when computer was not commonplace. But in their offices today, you see laptops also. You see them using the laptop. You see them typing documents. They know copy and paste. They know Bluetooth. They know save a file. They know flash drive. So what that means in essence is sometimes old. I don't want to use the expression, but let me say an old cat can learn new tricks. So even the current journalists have a lot to learn, and I can assure you that whether they come out and say it or not, some of them are already learning it because really nobody wants to be left behind. Now, for aspiring journalists, with the backdrop of that, I think what they need to know is that all the things that normal journalists learned growing up when AI was not, on the surface like this, they need to know all those things too. But with the added consciousness that AI has its own capabilities. Because let's just give a vague instance. Imagine you're a journalist and you are skillful with AI. But I mean, one of these days, you went to cover news, you came back to the office, then Nigeria happens to you. Nepal, they don't cut your lights now, so no battery, your power bank, you left it at home. Now you cannot access ChatGPT, and maybe it was the weekend, and the other people, they've done their stories, they've gone home, they are stuck in the office. Now write story, you cannot write. But if you already have the traditional skills, like we spoke earlier about collaboration, all that will be missing that day is the collaborative aspect of the AI. But you still have your stuff as a journalist. So I would recommend that aspiring journalists still need. In fact, this is not just something I'm saying. This is something some AI developers have said that college students should still stick to. One AI developer said one time that they should stick to the basic principles of physics, biology, and he just mentioned some basic science courses that all these people in tech, all these science, computer people that they learn, that they should stick to the basics of that, because all AI is doing is it's putting elements of human knowledge in a machine. But the point is, if you don't even understand the knowledge that AI is using, you can't make much of it. And I like what someone told me one time that she heard somewhere. She was like, in the future, AI is not going to replace human beings. That human beings who know how to use AI will be the ones to replace those other human beings. So I think that's just the way to go. Let aspiring journalists learn all that they need to learn by the books. It might seem like, is this thing still necessary? If I can use computer to do it, shall learn it. Learn it first. I mean, there's a reason we go to school and we spend more than a year there. Some people are there 4 years, 5 years. You understand? Because thorough knowledge and skill that you apply for the rest of your career comes with repeated exposure to knowledge systematically, from 100 level, 200 level, one and all like that. So that's my recommendation to them.
Thank you very much for that, Mayokun. Thank you very much for making out the time to be here with us in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
But before you leave, I ask everyone who's on an episode with us, if you could develop an AI system to solve one problem, what would that problem be?
That's quite an interesting one. Let me think for a minute. That's quite an interesting one. But let me say this off the top of my head though, because one day I was randomly thinking about it, because for me personally, running the Archbishop News in school, that was like a brainchild of mine that God helped me to create after taking a course from one of my beloved lecturers, Dr. Mayosori Alade. She taught us online journalism, gave us an assignment that actually led to creating the Archbishop News. And I observed that back then, when we had to post stories, sometimes we were stuck, because like now we've been throwing out stories on our Instagram back to back, and students are on holiday. I don't have someone I can call and say, go and snap this in school. I mean, the students who want to snap are not even there. And it's blogging, so we always take pictures along with these things. So back then, it used to be trouble, because maybe I want to write about water issue in the hostel. I'm not saying that that's something we typically write about, but just for instance, the time when such a situation will come up and somebody will think of picking up a camera might not happen in many weeks. The one who has this, someone who takes the picture might not know me, I might not know that I need that picture. So that creates an issue, and say, now we have to just use a random picture of the internet that doesn't align, but people will shall understand. But these days, you can go on many AI tools, type a prompt, say, just show me somebody with a bucket of water in uh, an African hostel or something. It's so interesting, and then you get to be able to do your article. So for me personally, AI is already open even in running the blog, and I feel if I was going to create something with AI that would solve a problem, it's still related to solving people's information needs, right? Like the way students now are coming into Redeemers University, there are a lot of questions on their minds. At best, you can do something that we've done before on the blog. We try to do it every year since we started. We provide a long list of frequently asked questions. But deep down, we know that
I remember reading that as well when I was about to enter.
That's nice too. That's nice to hear. Thank you. Now, we provide a long list of questions, but there will still be questions on your mind that we didn't think of or that are just peculiar to you. For instance, some students come and because of their peculiar health situations, they want to know certain things about the school. That if they want certain things, where can they go to? You understand something like that? You might not be there as a human being, right, to respond to that. So if you have an AI chatbot, which is what some websites do now, it might provide maybe near 90% or almost 100% as accurate an information that a professional human being or someone who knows their way around the University can produce for you. So I don't know if I was offered some money to develop a system, not like I'm an AI developer, but I think to still revolve around an information system like that, something that, gives you the kind of information you're looking for in a way that, humans can actually present it to you too.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Mayokun, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you
Thank you too.
for sharing both your inspiring personal journey and your deep insights. We've learned that while AI has the power to speed up reporting, broaden access, and even fight misinformation, it also raises tough ethical questions about trust and accountability. At the end of the day, technology may change journalism's tools, but trust will always remain its foundation. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of DiZruption. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with others, and continue the conversation with us online. A link to our X page will be included in the description, and the link to our guest profile will also be included in the description. Thank you very much again for joining us on this episode. I'll see you in the next one.